Hi, this is the second phase of the Artists slash Athletes magazine tutorial, and I'm going to show you how to open your document and get some of the basics set up before you begin placing all the important information. So the first thing you want to do is open InDesign and double check that you are going to be working in inches. And to do that, sometimes I just go into preferences. We don't usually go into preferences too much, but you want to go to units and increments. Make sure it says inches for horizontal and vertical. So that's kind of um, the first step to make sure that you're going to have a good experience while you open this first document. Notice that the layout looks a lot like Illustrator. You've got your toolbar on the left. You can double wide or keep it nice and long. I tend to do the double wide because that's how I demonstrate. And then you should see your panels on the right. So we're going to go File, New, and you'll notice there are three options, and you're going to start with a document. Here's your dialog box, and for this project you're going to need 5 pages since you have a cover and 2 spreads. And you want to make sure that you are at facing pages, so that's selected. Right here you're going to have 8.5 by 11, which is your standard document size, and orientation is at vertical. For columns, I tend to work in a 3-column layout when I'm doing magazines because it seems to be the best, the most suitable layout for all of the images and columns of text that we're using, but feel free to change that if you want a different amount of columns. And for your margins, I leave them at the standard 0.5 inches. So now when you hit OK, you're going to see your layout. You'll see the cover page alone and then 2 spreads, which means pages side by side. I'm going to zoom out just a tad so you can see my full layout. So notice that the guides are showing 3 columns on each page, and just remember that you can view in the normal view or you can see preview, which shows you what your printout would look like. Sometimes it tends to get a little bit, people get bogged down with a lot of guides and marks. It's nice to see that sort of refreshing basic layout on the preview mode every once in a while. So let's talk about the cover first. And I'm just going over basics. The best thing for this project is to look at existing magazines and get some ideas as to what you want the cover to look like. I'm going to start by naming this. It's going to be called Frida Magazine since it's about Frida Kahlo. So I'm just going to click once with my, actually I'm going to click a little bounding box with my T-tool. I'm not going to worry about the size quite yet, but I'm just going to type Frida. And Frida's one of my favorite artists from Mexico. She's got a really unique style, very intriguing kind of artwork. So I just typed Frida, and now I need to make some choices about my fonts and my size. I have a feeling I'm going to want to go up to about 150, and notice that when I did that, it's telling me I need to make the bounding box bigger, which is perfectly fine. I just drag the bounding box bigger and the rest of the text shows, and I can shrink it back to whatever I need. Okay, so there's my font. I kind of like this really basic look for the title. However, if I wanted to change the font, I could always go in here and choose anything else. Maybe something more decorative or more bold, or you could even download something from dafont.com. I'm going to stick with this just because I think it has a very magazine type feel to it. Now this is your masthead. So your masthead's going to involve a couple parts. I tend to like to put a block of color behind it. So to put a colorful rectangle behind it, I just click the rectangle tool, and I want to make sure it's separate from my text. So I'm going to drag over the whole thing, and then I'm going to go down to my color here. And specifically, I can pick color in here, or I can load my swatches by going Window and Swatches. Where are my swatches? I'm going to see if I could just go from the color route, and I'll show swatches in a moment here, because the swatches in InDesign are a little bit different than what we're used to. They actually only have a couple options, and then you load your own swatches. So I want to go with something sort of vibrant, so I'm going to choose this purple color, and I'm going to send it to the back so I can see my text. So I'm just going to go Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And that's going to be my basic start of a masthead. Just remember that you can see those two options as you're putting your imagery in. Now I chose some really nice photos in here, so just for a quick review, I found a lot of photos that I want to use in the magazine, and I even prepared some changes with them in Photoshop before I started this. Specifically, I took the background out of one of them, so it's got a nice clear background behind it. So that would be this one. Notice the difference between these two. What I decided, however, is I really like the colors in this one after all, so I'm going to end up using it as is. So when you pull your pictures into InDesign, they're going to come up with a little icon of what the picture is going to look like. And I just I'm going to put this picture in an actual size because I want it really big. So I'm just going to click. And notice that the picture is really big, and I can't really even see what I'm doing here because the picture is really large. So I want it to fit within that magazine cover. Now in InDesign, to make something smaller, instead of just holding Shift, you need to hold Command and Shift. So I'm going to drag that quite a bit smaller and position it on my magazine where I want it to be. Command and Shift, remember both buttons down. And now here's the nice thing about InDesign. If you just grab these little handles, you can actually, zoom back in a bit, you can actually shrink and crop while you just pull these. It's going to keep the photo proportions the same. If I want to move the whole picture down, I can move it down. But it just kind of helps you crop the image. It's supposed to work that way. So if you want it to work like Illustrator, you hold Command Shift, and if you want it to just crop, then you would just hold Shift. Now this photo looks a bit pixelated, and one reason that might be, I'm going to double check under my View menu and go to Display Performance, and I'm going to switch it to High Quality Display. Notice that gave me a little bit of a sharper image, and now when I look at my preview mode, that's what I have for the cover so far. Okay, so I really like the layout so far. I've got tons of space over here for my taglines and all of the different parts that are going to need to be on the cover. So I'm going to focus a little bit on the cover for a while and make sure that I've got everything that I want to put on there. Okay, so the main titles that I've decided to put on there are a little bit of information about her life, about her personal life, and also about her artwork. Those are kind of going to be my taglines and my in this area over here. So I might even put some rectangles in and make them that same purple color and use that as sort of a frame for some of those headings. I just kind of like to add shapes to it. You don't have to add the shapes. You can do all kinds of things. In fact, it really does help to look at existing magazines to decide what you want to do with your design. It's sort of looking like with all of these shapes here. I'm going to hold Shift just like I would in Illustrator, and I'm going to take the black outline off of those. I think that'll be a little bit clearer that way. All right, so I'm going to add some text in here, and I'm going to use my T tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to drag a text box. If I click in here, it's going to turn that into a text box. I'm just going to head out over here to type my different titles for articles. So article number 1 is going to be Family History. Okay, and then I'm going to just make that a tiny bit bigger before I even move it over. So your taglines or your highlight lines can be slightly bigger because they're supposed to be headings. And I can always adjust this more once I get it over here, fit it wherever I want it to be. I can change the color of the text. I might want to do something bright to kind of go with my theme and look around and see how I want it to look. I'm actually going to go with white, though. I think that'll stand out the best. So Family History, once you stick to a couple fonts for your magazine, you want to repeat them. So I'm going to go with something a little bit different for my headings. I'm going to go with this Onyx, and I'm going to raise it up to about 30 points and use that as my headings for the articles. So family history, now I'm just going to option drag that straight down to keep the consistent layout. And I'm going to type in early years. Oops. And then the last one I'm going to put is art gallery, because I'm going to have a page where it's just mainly about her artwork. Okay, so those are kind of my headings. Again, I want to check this often to see what I've got and how it's looking. And then I'm going to do a little bit more up here to the masthead. I'm going to type her last name, so I'm going to drag another. Oops, that one's trying to select my existing text box. I'm going to go back into this mode. I'm going to type it out here. I tend to like to drag out here and then place things where I want it to be. So I'm going to do Kahlo, which is her last name. I'm going to do that in a different font. I want to do something kind of scripty with it and make that nice and big, but not as big as the rest. And I'm going to change that also to white, I believe, just to kind of get it. Actually, I might even use my eyedropper tool and actually select colors from parts of the picture if you want. Maybe I'll do this lighter blue to sort of pull in another color. There we go. Just to kind of get a consistent feel for it. So I'm going to place this down next to her name just to kind of make my masthead a little bit more interesting. Now with your masthead, if you want to add any special effects to it, you can use some of the different options in InDesign that work a lot like Photoshop. So if I click on that and I want to change it a little bit, actually, why don't we do that at the very end? Let me just keep working on placement of things. Okay, so we're going to need to put in a barcode, a couple more taglines, and a date line. So for my date line, I'm just going to say issue date. And I'm going to put colon May 2015. So that's a part of the magazine that I need to put on there. Slide that right underneath the title. Okay, and so you're starting to see what I mean about all of these extra parts, kind of all these boxes hanging around. They're really meant to help you line things up, but when you click away, you can really see what your magazine's got without it. Okay, so I'm going to just sort of wrap up this tutorial, this cover tutorial for now, because I'm going to break this tutorial into several different parts. So here's a starting phase of working with your magazine. You're going to basically design your entire cover with information that you're going to be putting inside the magazine. So I recommend looking at magazines for examples. And once you've got that set up, you're going to start working on your interior pages, which is what I'm going to show next. I'm going to hit